My name is Mark. I'm 38 now, but back then, I was a staff sergeant stationed at Fort Bragg. I'd spent nearly 15 years in the Army, and if you asked anyone around me, they'd say I was born for it. I was raised by my grandparents after losing both parents in a car crash when I was 9. My grandpa was a Korean War vet, stern but proud, and he taught me everything about honor, duty, and how a man should carry himself even when no one's looking. I met Rachel during a 4th of July barbecue on base. She was my commanding officer's daughter, and the kind of woman who walked into a room and made it feel warmer. We started talking over beers and grilled ribs, and from there, everything moved fast. Her dad approved, and soon enough, I found myself marrying into the family. I felt like I had finally built the kind of life I'd dreamed of as a kid, one built on loyalty, legacy, and a home that meant something. But that dream cracked wide open faster than I ever saw coming. I was called into a meeting one morning, blindsided by an official report filed against me. Misconduct, falsifying records, and unprofessional behavior. None of it made sense. It felt like my entire career was collapsing under something I didn't even understand. Within a week, I was forced into separation. My rank, my reputation, my place in the only world I'd ever belonged to, it was all gone. And worse, it came from the very people I thought would stand by me. I didn't know it yet, but that betrayal was just the beginning. The hearing was swift and cold. I stood in front of a panel that looked at me like I was already guilty. They read the charges without blinking. Falsifying mission logs, misconduct during deployment, and unprofessional conduct with a subordinate. It was like someone had opened a file on a different man and stamped my name on it. I kept waiting for someone to speak up, to say this was some kind of mistake. No one did. My commanding officer, my father-in-law, just sat there, arms crossed, silent. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. And that silence said more than any sentence could. The next morning, I was handed my discharge papers. My rank stripped, benefits gone, career over. Rachel didn't say much either. I came home that night, hoping we'd talk, that she'd ask me what happened. Instead, she handed me a manila envelope. Inside were divorce papers, filed 2 days before the hearing. It hit me like a brick. I asked her why, begged her to tell me she didn't believe what they said. Her face didn't even flinch. She just said it was better to walk away before the scandal got worse. I packed my duffel bag in silence. It was all I had left. The rest are photos, my uniforms, even my grandfather's flag from Korea. She said she'd send them later. I knew she wouldn't. I made one last call. My mother. I hadn't talked to her much in the past few years. We'd grown apart after my enlistment. But in that moment, I needed her. I needed someone. She answered. I told her everything in a rush, voice cracking somewhere between shame and disbelief. She didn't yell, she didn't cry. Just paused, then said, "Maybe this is what happens when you bring shame to a family that wore the uniform proudly for generations." Then she hung up. That silence after the click, that was the loneliest moment of my life. I stood at the gate of Fort Bragg in the rain, boots soaked, duffel at my feet. The guard who let me out didn't meet my eyes. Maybe he was told not to. Maybe he believed the reports. My uniform was gone. All I had left was a pair of jeans, an old army hoodie, and the weight of betrayal clinging to my spine. Every step away from that gate felt heavier than the last. I didn't have a car. Rachel kept it. I didn't have a plan. No job, no home, no one is waiting for me. Just the sound of rain tapping my shoulders and the steady buzz of sodium lights overhead. I walked for hours, not knowing where I was going. At some point, I found a bus station. I bought a one-way ticket west with what little I had in my account. No destination, just west. Away from everything I'd built. Away from the faces that turned cold overnight. It wasn't just the discharge that broke me. It was how quickly the people I loved chose to believe the worst version of me. How my entire life, built on discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice, could be wiped out in days. You'd think a man like me would be angry, that I'd want revenge. But I wasn't angry. I was hollow. like someone had scraped out everything inside and left a uniform shell to drift in the dark. What hurt most wasn't losing the army. I realized I never really had a family to begin with. Not one that knew me. Not one that stood with me when the storm hit. That week didn't just end my career, it erased who I thought I was. And I had to start over from zero. But sometimes zero is exactly where you need to be to rebuild from truth. I just didn't know it yet. I ended up in Oregon because the bus stopped there, and I had just enough left for a week's rent and a cup of black coffee. I found a listing for a cabin tucked away near Mount Hood. It wasn't much, just 4 wooden walls, a tin roof, and a stove that clicked for 10 minutes before lighting. But it was quiet. After everything, that silence felt like air after drowning. My days started with fog rolling through the trees and ended with the distant hum of wind in the pines. I took a job as a night watchman at a warehouse that stored auto parts. 12-hour shifts, little interaction, and a lot of time to think. During the day, I slept a few hours, then spent the rest trying to teach myself something, anything that might give me a future. I landed on coding, JavaScript, Python, backend stuff. I didn't even know how to pronounce them yet. It gave me structure, which felt like home. I kept a notebook by my bed, the kind with weathered pages and creased corners. It started as a journal, then slowly became a place where I mapped out ideas. I scribbled old training drills from my days in the army, psychological exercises from the recovery programs we'd used overseas. I wasn't sure what I was building yet, but I knew who I was building it for. Men like me. Soldiers with no flag to salute and no mission to wake up for. Guys who needed to feel sharp again. At night, between patrol rounds, I sketched screens on the back of inventory forms. I imagined an app that wasn't flashy but worked like muscle memory. It would have training routines, response drills, and breathing cycles. A tool to retrain the nervous system when the nightmares hit. I called it Reboot, just as a placeholder. The name stuck. I didn't tell anyone. Not the clerk at the gas station who gave me free coffee some mornings. Not the landlord who thought I was some burnout ex-cop. I didn't post updates or join veteran forums. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was building something with my hands again. Something no one could take from me. On weekends, I hiked the ridge behind the cabin with a thermos of coffee and my old boots. The forest didn't care who I had been. It didn't care about rank, about shame, or about dishonor. It just existed. And in that stillness, I started to feel like I could exist too. Coding became more than a skill. It became my new formation. Every line of logic I wrote was a step away from what had happened, and a step closer to what could be. The more I worked, the more I believed this might be useful. That this small app in a cold cabin might reach someone who didn't know how to ask for help. It took almost a year before I showed it to anyone. A guy from my old unit called out of the blue. He'd heard I'd gone dark. We met at a diner halfway to Portland. I showed him the prototype on my cracked laptop. He didn't say much, just stared for a while, then nodded and said, "We needed this yesterday." That was the first time I felt like maybe I wasn't just surviving anymore. Maybe I was building something worth standing for again. Reboot turned into Silent Vets after year 3. It grew beyond an app. It became a network, a resource, and a tactical tool designed by soldiers for soldiers. I brought in 3 guys from my last unit. One had a background in cybersecurity, another in logistics, and the third had just finished a business degree on the GI Bill. None of us wore suits. We met in coffee shops, shared files on Dropbox, and coded through the night like the world was watching, even though no one was. Word spread quietly, the way things do in veteran circles. First came the Marines, then National Guard units. By year 5, a few private defense firms started licensing parts of our software. By year 7, we were running closed beta programs with DoD consultants. We didn't advertise, we didn't pitch. We just made something that worked. Somewhere along the way, a venture fund came knocking. A guy who had done 3 tours in Afghanistan sat across from me in a diner and made an offer. I didn't say yes right away. I needed to be sure Silent Vets wouldn't turn into something it wasn't meant to be. After months of talks, I agreed on the condition we'd keep the core team intact and the mission unchanged. The acquisition closed at 69 million. I saw the number, closed the laptop, and went for a walk. I didn't buy a car. I didn't move out of the cabin. The money didn't change my rhythm. I still made coffee at 4 a.m. and hiked the same ridge every Sunday. But for the first time in my life, I had built something no one could take from me. There were no medals, no applause, just peace. And for a man like me, that was everything. It started with a name in a report. One of our clients mentioned an outdated private security firm that had recently lost a government contract. I recognized it instantly. Valor Strategic. That was the company my father-in-law helped run after he retired from the army. It was also the same group that quietly worked behind the scenes to push me out a decade ago. Most of their board was ex-military. All of them operated like they were untouchable. That arrogance made them sloppy. I reached out through a holding company based in Delaware. Clean, anonymous, no direct ties to me. Within 2 months, we acquired 12%. Then 20. By the time we hit 41, I had a controlling interest. No one asked questions. No one looked twice. Just another silent investor buying into a legacy business that had lost its edge. I kept it that way. The annual shareholder meeting was held at a conference center in D.C. I flew in a day early, checked into a quiet hotel on the other side of town, and put out a suit I hadn't worn since my court hearing 10 years ago. I didn't bring anyone, no press, no camera crew, just a folder, a clean shave, and the resolve of a man who never forgot what they did. When I walked into that room, the first thing I saw was his face. My ex-father-in-law, older now, grayer around the edges, but still sharp. He scanned the room like he always did, always sizing people up. His eyes passed right over me. I took a seat at the back and waited. The meeting dragged through numbers, proposals, and projected losses. That's when the chairperson announced a change in voting structure. A new majority holder would be joining the board. I stood. The room shifted. People turned, whispering. My name echoed once. Then again, the old man looked straight at me. I stepped forward, handed the folder to the secretary, and said calmly, "My name is Mark Jennings. As of last quarter, I own 51% of Valor Strategic. I'm here to claim my seat." He didn't move, didn't blink, but the color drained from his face like someone had pulled the rug out from under his legacy. For a moment, no one spoke. I sat at the table, nodded once, and added, "I came to restore what was taken from me. I don't need revenge. I just want the truth to have a place at this table." Someone clapped. Just one person. A young analyst in the corner who probably didn't know the full story. It didn't matter. I hadn't come for applause. I had come for closure. The rest of the meeting was a blur of formalities and legalese. My voice was calm. My vote was final. By the end of the day, the structure of the company had changed. So had silence in that room. Men who once ignored me now watched their words. And the man who erased my name from his ranks had to write it again at the top of the board minutes. After the meeting, he followed me into the hallway. I stopped before he could speak. I said what I needed to say. I told him I didn't want anything from him, not respect, not remorse, not even an apology. I told him he taught me something. That power isn't in command. It's in restraint. Then I walked away. No one knew who I was 10 years ago. And now, they still didn't really know. Because I wasn't that disgraced soldier anymore. I was a builder, a strategist, a survivor who wrote his own mission. And that, to me, was the quietest, loudest victory of all. The letter came first. It was from my mother. Her handwriting hadn't changed. She said she heard what I'd done, that she was proud, that she'd been wrong. There was no anger in me when I read it, just a quiet stillness. I folded the letter, placed it in a drawer, and left it there. I didn't need her words to move forward. I already had. A week later, Rachel showed up. She waited outside the company office. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked nervous, out of place, holding a coffee she never touched. When I walked past, She called my name like it still belonged to her. I stopped, listened. She said she didn't know, that she believed what her father told her, that if she could go back, she would. I told her I forgave her, not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. I told her the man she married no longer existed, that the man she left had built a new life without her, and that life didn't need revisiting. She cried, but I didn't. I wished her peace. Then I walked away. Later that year, one of my old unit buddies passed in a car wreck. He left behind a 6-year-old boy named Elijah. No family, just a godparent document with my name on it. I didn't hesitate. I packed a bag, drove out, and brought him home. We moved to a quiet town near the Oregon coast, the kind of place where the waves speak louder than traffic. I bought a little house with cedar shingles and a porch that faced the sea. Elijah liked the cold. He'd press his face to the glass when it snowed, waiting for it to stick. That first winter, we walked down to the beach with our boots crunching through thin frost. His hand fit in mine like it was always meant to be there. He asked me why the ocean made that sound, and I told him it was the world breathing. We didn't need much, just each other, just quiet. I used to think peace was about setting the record straight, about getting even, but standing there with that boy beside me, watching the tide pull in like it always does, I finally understood something. Peace was never about proving them wrong. It was about finding where I truly belong.